What was like your first week like? So you exited, you got your payout, and you were not obligated in the deal to have to say work for it for another 2 years to
Right.
complete. So you signed it, handed over the keys, and that was it.
We were in the fortunate situation to have a competitive process, and there were like a number of different deals that we were looking at. And so
Oh, I
because of
see.
that, I had a bit more freedom in terms of how long I would agree to stay on and what the conditions of that would be. And when we sold, I knew that I didn't want to continue with the business. I knew that I wanted to move on, and I knew in the like directionality wise, like what it is that I wanted to do. And I knew that I needed to like, because at the time I was like running basically like every like business process, everything needed to be transitioned. And so what I agreed to is that for 6 months after we closed the deal, that I would sort of consult and make sure that everything was like properly transitioned, and then I would be completely out. And so that's what I did. The day that we signed, it's always like this, all these big moments, like they're very anticlimactic. And you always remember like the struggle and the hard part as opposed to these moments that are meant to be magical. But yeah, it sort of like happened. We signed. I couldn't tell anybody because we couldn't let press know until we didn't announce it until June, and we closed the deal in April. But that liminal space was a very hard one because it was, how do I spend my days? What am I focused on? If I sit down at my desk, what is it that I'm doing? Like all of the structures that I would normally have of like, okay, you have an all hands meeting that you need to prep for and all of these things, like that stuff didn't exist anymore. And I felt pretty rudderless for that first couple of months. And then we announced in June, and shortly thereafter, I took my kids on a European adventure for a month, which was like unbelievable. But yeah, that first period was really, really very draining and like
Yeah.
which way's up.
We were originally scheduled to talk 4 or 5 months ago,
Mhm.
and you were not ready. What were you doing? So you're now fully out. Your kids are back in school for the fall. What happened?
Gosh. Okay. So I took my kids on the trip, and then when I was on the trip, actually, someone that I had met years earlier had reached out who had a Gen AI project that they needed a GM for. And they wanted me to join their leadership team, which like I didn't want to jump into a business in like a leadership capacity. I was really like, I will found something else. I said I would consult. And at the time they were working like with Quantum AI Group, who's like amazing, really smart, talented engineers. And I had done some AI work at Obey. And I was also a very early adopter to a lot of the AI tools. And so I was really excited about that. So I agreed to consult for like 3 days a week. It ended up being like 7 and travel and, all of the things. But I did that for Q4. So when I got back from Europe and then through the end of the year. And that was really fun. And, I think that was a really important experience because it got me into like a really big company setting, which I very quickly remembered that I'm not into. And then, but I also met incredible people that are unbelievable engineers and physicists, and like, it was super, super cool. The relationships there were really key. And then what I'm working on now, so there's two things. There's a dyslexia curriculum that really helped my son, that my interest in that, or I guess my exposure to it happened just like naturally being a parent. And I was trying to help him in Orton Gillingham, which is like the traditional approach they use for dyslexic kids, like just didn't work for him. And I, through a documentary, found someone who was profiled in the documentary. It's called The Truth About Reading on Amazon. I just literally typed dyslexia into Amazon Prime and found this documentary. I was so moved by it. And I got an introduction to this woman, and I took my son there to see her. And like literally, he had 12 hours of total instruction, and he went from a second grade reading level to a sixth grade reading level. And I was like totally blown away by it. And the founder of this program is called EBLI. It's Evidence-Based Literacy Instruction. Her name is Nora Shabazi, and she was a neonatal intensive care nurse who had a daughter with dyslexia. And her daughter didn't respond to the traditional sort of ways of dealing with it as well. And so she created this method, and she pulled together a lot of the scientific research, et cetera. And she taught her daughter how to read. And so she's been doing it for 20 years. The business, it's a small business, and she really needed my help. And throughout, like I helped her for a very, very long time doing different things like building GPTs for state applications and, whatever the case may be, like however I could be helpful, which was a really great outlet during the sales process. And she really has wanted me to come work for her for a long time. And I'm still not ready to work for someone. Again, I
Yeah.
know that I will start something else, but I've been doing that in a part-time capacity. And then there's also this thing on the biotech side in the peptide space, which I'm trying to figure out.
We're all trying to figure out what peptides are.
Yeah.
You inject them, you live forever, everything turns out just fine.
And we all
Where
become
they come
robots.
from, they come from somewhere in China, but don't worry, it's all fine. I think that what I've observed in the conversation I've been having with people is that during this liminal phase, most of us are not great at doing nothing. And I also had I'm almost at 3 years now of going to my computer every day because that's what I knew to do.
Mhm.
I mean, like, why am I tweaking my homepage again? Like, what is this for?
Yeah.
What I've noticed that people do, and maybe this is the stage you're in, is keep trying things on because it's good to have something to do, and also offers more and more clarity about what you definitely don't want or don't want to do. I also think there's value in taking stillness, which is the hardest part of all of it.
Yeah.
To say, don't need to jump in right now. You know, what is it in my heart's calling